All right, so let's do a couple moves from butterfly seated. So first we're going to start with a really quick slick choke you can hit from almost anywhere, almost any guard. Works great from butterfly guard, works great from half guard. It's pretty good from closed guard. It's a little bit better from some of the open guards just because you have a little more ability to change your head height and stuff like that. So it's a loop choke. And it's definitely a personal favorite. Michelle's hit these in competition before. She actually hit this in the Worlds, like losing in like the last 12 seconds. She just went for broke and finished this choke and won a match. It was awesome. So what we're gonna do is start in butterfly guard, hooks in, right? Generally I'm gonna be here like protecting my legs and stuff like that. So what I'm looking for this technique is a cross grip on the lapel. And you're gonna have to figure out exactly what height works best for you. But I find personally that if I put my finger, this flat part of my finger right here on my knuckle, right on the collarbone, if I can feel that collarbone, it's usually just about right. And that equates to being like even with kind of the bottom of his neck. Not quite his chin, but like the bottom of his like trachea right here. All right? So what I'm gonna try to do is pull this lapel across so that the lapel is on one side of his neck. And then as I flex my wrist up, my hand right here is gonna be on the other side of the neck. I wanna use this bone in my thumb to do a majority of the choking, all right? So you'll find exactly where that grip is. I don't want to be too high for sure, and I don't want to be too low. It's going to be really hard to finish. It takes a lot of muscle, all right? So what I'm going to do to set it up is once I get this grip, I need to off balance Michael. The key to loop chokes is getting his head lower than my head, all right? And kind of the lower the better, all right? Especially for the finish. So what I'm going to do is take my foot and step on his knee. So the same side that I have the lapel grip on, I'm going to step on his knee. And real quick, I'm gonna knock this knee out from under him. And as I do it, I'm gonna pull this grip down and towards me, all right? So I stomp his knee out, I pull him down towards me like this, okay? It's very common to get people in this position, so it's pretty simple setup, right? All I have to do now is I'm gonna hit my forearm, basically like punch it into Michael's chest, right? Slap it in there kind of hard. You should be able to hear a thud, right? I wanna hit his chest with that just so I make sure I clear his chin and I'm actually on his throat. And then I'm gonna pull my elbow up, so I'm pulling the lapel across his throat and then up, so my elbow's exposed higher than his head on this side, okay? Then to finish the submission, all I have to do is take my other arm that's free, I'm gonna take it across, and I'm gonna put my forearm on the back of Michael's head, right, as close to his shoulders as possible, and then I'm gonna tuck my hand under my arm and flex my fingers up so it makes a hook on the back of my arm, okay? Once I have that hook, I'm working to pull this elbow down, and I can straighten my left arm to flex my wrist into the choke, right? And then I basically just push his head down into the choke. And a lot of times I like to close my knee on the outside here, so he can't really escape the choke. I have a really loose grip, so it's not super tight. If you guys want, when you're drilling this, to drill it fast, you can start with a little bit of a low grip, because it is hard to finish with a low grip. But the perfect grip would be right about there, okay? So I'm here, I get my cross grip, stomp this knee out, pull in, and then immediately slap that forearm into his chest, pulling the slack out of the lapel on this side, elbow up on the other side. This hand goes over, kind of like you're doing the wave, like you're swimming. I want to go up and over his head, and then my fingers go back up, right? My knee goes on the outside, and my elbow goes down. So the closer I get my hand to my wrist, the tighter this choke's gonna be. So I don't want to be up here necessarily with my hand. The closer you get it to the head, the better. But there's a little bit of a diminishing return there because Michael's escape for this choke is to pull his head out that hole. He has two escapes. He can either, if he's fast enough, he can pull his head out that hole, or he could do like a gator roll through, and now I have to try to follow him, which can be really difficult to do, right? So that's why when I'm doing this technique, I'm typically trying to get in nice and close off this space. The lower you pull their head down, the harder it is for them to lift their head out that hole. But also if I kind of connect my elbow to his shoulder, connect my knee to my elbow, I can close off that space really well. You can bring your foot up to the hip if it helps, like whatever you think is gonna be best to close that space off, right? But the finish, I'm pushing his head down with my elbow. So I'm pushing this down, lifting my hand up, and then flexing this wrist into the choke. Okay. So one last time, over here, I catch this grip. And this is a good grip too because it's not like a very assuming grip. Like if you grab up high on somebody's collar, like this is a cross collar choke grip. Like if you get this on somebody, 9 times out of 10, they're gonna reach up and break the grip, right? Because he doesn't like that grip. He knows I'm gonna try to choke him with it. But like this grip is like, it's loose. Like people don't normally respect this grip. especially like in half guard and stuff like that, you can have this grip for like a minute and they just won't even realize that you're doing something with it. And then all of a sudden, before they know it, like you're in this choke. And it happens really fast, all right? So the motion is this: I'm pulling in, punching away, then up, then through. So it's like this, okay? Quick. Good grip. Stomp, down, in, across, close the space. And the more you lean to your side, the tighter you can make this choke. You can kick your legs over to stop them from rolling and stuff like that. There's lots of different cool things you can do with your legs, but for now, just the basic choke. It's like this. Okay? All right, let's start with that. 1, 2, 3. Okay. So when we're finishing our chokes, we have to make sure we're doing the right things with our hands. Most of you guys are figuring out we're getting to the right place with our hands, but the hands are actually super important on loop chokes. So the one that's coming over the top, when I talk about it like swimming like this, because I want you guys to end in this upward motion like this. I want to flex this hand backwards as much as I can because I'm trying to make a hook to hook behind this arm so it doesn't go anywhere. But that hook is also a lever for me to push down on my elbow against to give me a little extra leverage, okay? So now the trick about most chokes, almost every choke, yeah, almost every collar choke I should say, is it's a flick of the wrist to finish this choke, okay? I'm trying to drive basically the bones from my thumb knuckle, the base knuckle here, through to this joint right there on my wrist. Like this is the area I'm trying to drive into the neck. So if my hand is like this, I can't really drive that area into the neck because this is kind of the same shape as the neck, it's round, right? But if I tilt it forward like that, this bone protrudes, and all that drives right into the neck, right? So I want you guys to imagine that you're either fly fishing, bass fishing, right? Beat Saber, whatever, like just playing the drum, something like that, right? So as this hand comes around, turn this a little bit. As this hand comes around, I'm not just pulling up on it, I'm also flexing the wrist into it. I'm trying to do that fly fishing or whatever motion, playing the drums, okay? Because that is what drives that knuckle in, that into the neck. And then this hand, my fingers pointing up and driving this elbow down, makes the choke really strong. So those two things together are what really make the choke happen, okay? So let's just make sure we're doing that. Everyone's looking pretty good. Another thing too, this choke is super hard to do if their head is up high. So some of you guys are kind of forgetting the first part and you're like this, and it's really hard to like get over this person's head and everything. So really like be a little bit violent with this pull, like get this person down. The lower I get him, the tighter my choke's gonna be. If I put his forehead on the floor, that's perfect. I want him down between my legs as low as possible. The higher he is, I don't have any leverage to push down anymore because I can't like, it just doesn't work. And you'll see it just doesn't feel right. And if you're having problems finishing it, that's probably why, all right? So just bury that head in the ground between your legs to really get a nice tight finish. Flex that wrist, flex this wrist up. So one wrist goes down, one wrist goes up, okay? All right, let's keep going. 1, 2, 3. All right, one last thing really quick about the loop. I didn't really mention this. I didn't want to confuse you guys or anything. It doesn't matter which foot you kick out, honestly. It really doesn't. But you just want to stay in front of the person. So if I kick him out and he goes like way off to the side, like I'm gonna have a really hard time getting his head back under control, right? And even if I do, like my angle's so bad, it's just probably gonna slip right off. So if you're having that kind of problem, whatever, maybe just kick the other leg out, whatever. They both work fine. Either way works just as good. You just gotta figure out which one works better for you. And the last thing is this, everyone has different arm lengths, arm widths and stuff like that. So everyone's gonna have a different grip placement. All right, come real close. So I have pretty long arms, so I feel like this is the perfect grip for me when that hand is right about even with the neck, right? That's what feels perfect for me, right? But if you have short arms, you're gonna wanna be lower because remember, you have to get your elbow up higher than his head on the other side. So if your arm is short, you're gonna have to adjust your grip a little bit to make up for that, okay? And the other thing is this, if your grip is too low, actually two more things. If the grip is too low, what's gonna happen is when you pull this lapel across, it's gonna be tight over here, but the moment you pull it up, all this opens up right here. There's a huge gap that's gonna open up. So I don't wanna have too much slack in there because it definitely will be very hard to finish if there's that slack in there. So you really have to find that sweet spot, and everyone's gonna be different. And this is kind of like a really small detail when it comes to chokes and stuff like this, but this might help you guys a lot. When you get your grip, try to have only the lapel in your hand, right? I only have, in my thumb is only the lapel. If you have like a huge bunch of fabric like this, some of you guys have like all this fabric, you're gonna be pulling fabric from in his armpit and trying to get it over, like this is stretching so tight, it's hard for me to actually connect the grip the way I want it to. Plus my hand's gonna get tired over time and things like that. The least amount of lapel you can have in your hand, the more easy it is to manipulate around somebody's neck. And that works for like cross chokes and everything. The least amount I have, the better. So try not to get like a full, like massive bunch of lapel. Like really find the perfect grip and then go when you're ready. Okay, here we go. Try not to kill Michael. So this is a really, really fun one to do. It's really not fun to be drilled on, but this is a collar drag when people are coming in with their hips or their shoulders in front of their hips. And this is exactly why when you're standing in front of someone, unless you're hyper confident, you don't want to stand in that position when somebody's seated in front of you, okay? Because what happens anytime you bend at your hips and not your knees, your shoulders drift a little bit too far in front of your knees, and what happens? Your head carries a lot of weight. Like your head is like 20 pounds or something. It's like a big portion of your body weight, right? And it's gonna be in front of your toes, which means he's already leaning on his toes. He has to compensate by sitting back into his heels just to stand there comfortably, all right? He doesn't realize he's doing it, but subconsciously he is. So any amount of pull that I get on him is gonna make him fall forward. It's easy to pull people forward if they're bent at the hips. But if Michael bends at his knees and comes in with his back a little straight and his head a little bit higher, now when I pull him, he's got a much better base usually, and it's harder for me to pull him forward and stuff like that, okay? So what I'm gonna do, and I try to do this no matter what when I'm in butterfly, just because it's a really, really good, strong takedown / sweep that can work on really aggressive guard passers like Blue Belt Mark. This is the perfect thing to do on him. People come in and they get double pant grips. You should be fighting these grips. I don't want him to have 2 grips. This technique will work with 2 pant grips. I just want you to know that. What I'm gonna do is reach up and get a cross collar grip, right? So I'm reaching across to the far collar. This time I want a high grip, okay? The least amount of slack I can get, the better. So this time I want a high grip, and I'm not worried if he tries to break it. I actually want him to try to break it, okay? So I'm gonna reach up, get a nice high grip. Just make sure your elbow is pointed down when you're doing this. I don't wanna be like too straight in this position, because if Michael's feeling really froggy, he might like jump and armbar me and stuff. There's a really nice flying armbar from this position you don't wanna get stuck in, right? So keep your elbow down and bent. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm actually gonna stiff arm a little bit, but I'm gonna turn my hips to the side and put my hand on the mat and drop all my weight into my left side, so I'm facing away from Michael, okay? And it's kind of a bait tactic, but what I'm also doing is I'm winding up and coiling up all of my weight to one side for the next part. So Michael usually is gonna see this and he's gonna be like, oh look, his knees are pointing that way. I can get around his guard easily to this side, so I'm just gonna pass, right? That's exactly what I want him to think, because what I'm gonna do now is push. This foot has a lot of weight in it. I'm gonna push off of this foot and lift my hips up, right? And as I do that, I'm gonna jump and switch to my other hip, okay? So I jump, switch to my other hip, okay? I'm gonna do it very, very strong and very violently, okay? I'm gonna do it slow for the first time, but I have to show you at full speed so you can see what it looks like. As I do that, the moment I start to twist my hips, I'm gonna pull my elbow all the way down to the mat and slap my hand. So it's gonna be like this without Michael. Like that. I want you guys to slap the mat, right? You're pulling hard, you're slapping the mat. I'm not stopping here on my elbow. I'm dropping all the way down to the side of my forearm. Like that, okay? Like I say, I'm stopping on my elbow, but I still wanna hit the mat with my hand, all right? So nice and slow with Michael. As I do that, I'm gonna reach this foot out as far as I can to try to trip this far leg. So slowly, it's gonna look like that, okay? Now, if I don't get a great pull or this happens relatively slow like that, and he ends up in this position, this is fantastic for me. All I have to do is take my free arm now, reach around his leg, and now I'm in a single leg. I can come up and just basically bulldoze him over. I could go to his far hip, like take up both of his knees and pinch him over, whatever. If he stands up, I can just follow him up with a single leg. But if you do this right, they're probably gonna face plant on the ground, and you probably end up on the back in best case scenario, you'll end up on the back. Sometimes end up in the mount, side control, whatever. So I'll do it a little faster. So I reach up, get a nice high grip on the collar. I'm turning away to coil up, but as I'm turning, now I start to stiff arm a little bit because I want him to like really try to pass, right? So I go, I'm gonna hop out, reach across to that far leg, point my toes, and pull my hand to the mat. This is what happens a lot, because you're gonna pull the near shoulder down, so it's hard for him to post on that hand because it's under my arm, right? So now it's relatively easy for me to come up, start attacking the back, and get my finish. So a little bit faster. Good. So again, got my collar. He thinks he's doing a good job by fighting my knees. I turn my hips away, I'm up, and I'm already on the back like instantly. If you do it right, face plant, it's exactly what we want. Now, this is a really good time to do this is when they try to break your grip. Because as I'm here, he might know what's happening. He might know that he's in trouble, especially when I turn away like this. Like if he's had it done to him, he's gonna know what's happening. So he's gonna realize that and try to break that grip. The moment he lets go of my pants and starts reaching up and grabs my hand, I'm not gonna wait until he starts pulling back. Because once he starts pulling back, then we're like fighting each other with strength, right? But the moment he takes his hands up and connects to my wrist, that's when I go, right? And if you do it at the right time, he's committed to grabbing your wrist, which means his hands are probably not gonna go to the floor fast enough, and you get that face plant. So I'm here, I turn away, he reaches up to my hand, right away I hop, go out, come up, start attacking the back. So again, I want you guys to leave the ground with your hips. This isn't like a sliding move. This is not a rolling move. This is a hopping from one side to the other. Okay, it's violent, it's explosive, it's fast. Take care of each other, but understand if you're on top that your face might hit the ground at some point tonight. Okay, any questions? Let's do it, 1, 2, 3.